A hidden clue and a new unidentified DNA profile and a murder case that may not be as simple as it first appeared. Newly uncovered records are revealing a mystery person's DNA was found in connection to the Florida teen killed aboard a Carnival cruise ship. Her name, Anna Kepner. And that new DNA profile is raising some fresh questions about the evidence against her stepbrother, the suspected killer, Timothy Hudson. And there is some chilling behavior investigators are laying out for the first time about Timothy Hudson, the 16-year-old, what they say he did on the night he allegedly killed his stepsister. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. For months, much of what investigators say happened aboard a Carnival cruise ship the night that 18-year-old Anna Kepner died remained hidden. It was a huge mystery. But now newly unsealed court documents are providing the clearest picture yet of the FBI's investigation and revealing details that raise new questions in a case that has been nothing short of shocking. Now, some of those details were not expected. This is Timothy Hudson arriving in Miami last week for a hearing about whether or not he should be detained ahead of trial. He's 16 years old, showed little emotion, if any. Walking into the courtroom, his dad was by his side. Now, despite facing charges including murder and sexual battery, this 16-year-old, he is out of custody. He's living with relatives under court-ordered conditions. Now, because Hudson was originally charged as a juvenile in this case, much of the case in the investigation has been sealed. But now he's being prosecuted in adult court, and significant portions of the investigation have been made public for the first time. And those documents, more than 140 pages, are laying out what investigators believe happened aboard the cruise ship. And they're also revealing new evidence, new timelines, and a surprising development involving DNA evidence that we did not know about until now. So let's walk through what authorities say happened. And also we're going to take a look at some of this newly released information that is now coming to light. This story, to understand it, you have to go back to the beginning, which is November 2nd of last year. And that's when Anna Kepner and her family, they board a Carnival cruise ship in Miami. And it was supposed to be a nice vacation. But the living arrangements aboard this cruise ship are definitely of note in this case. 18-year-old Anna was sharing a cabin with her 13-year-old half-brother and her 16-year-old stepbrother. And that 16-year-old's name is Timothy Hudson. Now, across the hall, you had Anna's dad, Christopher Kepner, and you had his wife, a woman named Chantel, who is Timothy Hudson's biological mom. And there were also two female stepsisters of Anna, they're minors, who were staying in the room with the parents. Now, it does seem, for the most part, this cruise went as one would expect. The family sailed on board this ship to multiple spots in the Caribbean, like Cozumel, Mexico. But then on November 7th, this story becomes a tragedy. Documents state that crew members went to clean room 8343 on that morning, and that's when they found the body of 18-year-old Anna Kepner. She had been wrapped in a blanket, and she had been stuffed under her bed, according to investigators. They write, quote, "It appeared that someone had tried to hide her." Now, the FBI then was called because they handle investigations like this on cruise ships and in international waters. And the FBI boards the ship, they interview family members, and then they watch the surveillance video from the ship. And this is very key. Agents also spoke to Anna's half-brother, this 13-year-old boy who was sharing the room with Anna, and the murder suspect, Timothy Hudson. Now, after dinner on the night that Anna died, she had gone back to the room because she reportedly wasn't feeling well. But then the 13-year-old tries to go back to that same room to go to sleep. And he says when he opened the door to that stateroom, quote, T, who we now know as Timothy Hudson, put his arm out to block the room entrance from opening and did not allow the minor witness to enter and yelled, quote, "Wait, don't come inside." It's sketchy to say the least, but I don't think anybody at that point would have been anticipating what would be found inside the room and the story that we have now been covering for months. Now, that 13-year-old witness said all the lights to the cabin were on and the doors were open to the bathroom and the closet. Hudson allegedly forced the 13-year-old to then wait outside the stateroom in the hallway, Then after a period of time, he let him in. So the FBI then lays out a timeline of what they say Hudson allegedly did from watching this surveillance video. And this is incredibly important when you think about the case that prosecutors are going to make. So at 7:35, the night that Anna Kepner dies, documents claim that Timothy Hudson goes to that stateroom he was sharing with her. Then 3 minutes later, at 7:38 p.m., Anna Kepner is seen going into the stateroom. And that is the last time authorities say she is seen alive. Then at 7:51, Anna's 13-year-old half-brother tries to enter the room and he leaves quickly after. Then at 10:13 p.m., Timothy Hudson leaves the stateroom alone. Investigators say in the next hour, there is a good amount of movement going in and out of this room. Quote, upon opening the cabin door at 10:13 p.m., T, who is Timothy Hudson, is seen looking left and right down the hallway, appearing to check if anyone is in the hallway. And then he walks outside of cabin 8343, and this is the only time in which Hudson does that action while exiting the cabin door. Documents then show Hudson going in and out of the cabin 2 more times between 10:12 and 10:49. Then at 10:53, he puts a privacy sign on the door. He then goes back to the cabin just after 11 o'clock at night. And then shortly later at 11:21, the minor half-brother goes into the cabin and he told the FBI he didn't see his sister inside the cabin. He then leaves a couple minutes later at 11:23. Hudson allegedly goes in and out of the cabin at 11:44. Just after midnight at 12:09, you then see the 13-year-old who tries to get into the cabin, and that is when Timothy Hudson allegedly tells him not to come inside, and he forces him to wait in the hallway. He then goes into the room, and it is alleged the 13-year-old then sleeps in that stateroom, not knowing that his half-sister's body would be beneath the bed. Hudson has allegedly told family members that he doesn't remember what happened the night that Anna died. But then you have to wonder when you hear about his movements on the night that Anna died, how strong of an argument could that be? As well as you hear this about what he did with Anna's cell phone, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. That also could be incredibly damning to the defense. Now, the next morning after Anna was allegedly killed, her body is found. And documents show at 11:27 in the morning, Timothy Hudson is seen walking by the stateroom where there was commotion of crew who were trying to figure out how this young woman died. And this is chilling if this is true, what Timothy Hudson allegedly did. According to documents, quote, he makes no effort to look and see what's happening inside, even though so many people are still inside the cabin with the door open. He looks straight ahead and walks away. You would have to think if there was a major amount of commotion in the room where you were staying with your family members, you would at least look, unless you allegedly knew what had already happened to the young woman you were sharing that room with. Hey guys, running a business is tough enough, so why make it harder doing things manually or relying on dozens of apps that don't talk to each other? That's where our sponsor Odoo comes in. It's an all-in-one business management platform with a full suite of integrated apps that seamlessly connect all your operations from sales and accounting to manufacturing and even shipping. Odoo can automatically generate professional, sleek-looking sales orders, invoices, and vendor bills, and it can automatically assign sales teams, send email updates through each sales stage, and even use AI to pull reports that help with your decision-making. For manufacturing, their apps can sync inventory with real-time production and purchase updates so you never run out of stock. And when it comes time for accounting, that is also fully automated. Odoo can create invoices, track expenses, and even summarize data with AI to save you hundreds of hours. And the best part, you can choose your apps and even build custom workflows so it's all fully tailored to your business needs. Take your business to the next level by consulting with an Odoo expert today for free at odoo.com/OTC. Now, speaking of Anna, she documented a lot of her life on social media like TikTok. And like a lot of teens, she always had her phone on her. But after her body was found, authorities say that cell phone was missing. The FBI says they found her phone in the ship's lost and found. There was a crew member that said they found it in a trash bin, and it appeared that phone was damaged and smashed. Now, here are some more details. According to investigators, surveillance video allegedly shows Timothy Hudson leaving the cabin at 9:26 in the morning, the day after Kepner was killed. Then he returns at 9:48 in the morning. He then leaves the cabin again at 9:50, and it appears, according to authorities, he had something in his hand. Authorities then follow him on camera as they're following this CCTV, and they see that at 9:52 in the morning, Timothy Hudson allegedly puts his hands in the same trash bin where Anna Kepner's phone is later found. The FBI, beyond having the CCTV footage, they also got the GPS of Anna's phone, and they can see which routers it connects to on the ship. The FBI says they traced that phone and they found it moving on the same route that Timothy Hudson allegedly took to that trash bin, meaning he allegedly took Anna's phone after he allegedly killed her and then dumped it in the trash. Documents then go into detail about how authorities discovered that Anna Kepner had been sexually assaulted. Now, the details of that part of the story, I think they're very important when it comes to this case and the charges that Timothy Hudson is facing, but frankly, they're just too graphic to talk about here. But related to DNA, there has been a big twist in this case. Also, before I get into this part, I do want to tell you that all our Anna Kepner related documents that have been unsealed, you can find them on our Law&Crime Plus app, just in case you want to review them yourself. So here's what we know. The medical examiner conducted a rape kit on Anna, and there's a swab that allegedly came back as a hit on Timothy Hudson's DNA, according to investigators. But this is the twist. There was also a hit to someone who authorities are calling minor witness 2 in these documents, and they say it is a boy who lives out of state, and they say he had intercourse with Anna on this cruise. Now, it's unclear what the circumstances are surrounding that individual and whether it could raise any doubt as to what happened. Now, the video only shows the CCTV footage, Hudson, the 13-year-old half-brother, and Kepner going into that room. And then you have the half-brother who's been ruled out as far as being a DNA contributor. The medical examiner says that Timothy Hudson allegedly sexually assaulted Anna before she died. Now, what Timothy Hudson is accused of, it's horrific. And even though he is facing these major charges, again, he's not behind bars. This is video of him going into court last week, his dad by his side. Prosecutors have said they believe he's a danger to the community. I mean, we just laid out what he's accused of doing. It is terrifying, but he is not being held in pretrial detention. The defense says that the conditions that he's living under right now, that they're sufficient. The conditions were put in place for him to live with his uncle when he was charged as a juvenile, and they say he has followed that to a T the entire time. Now, the judge made an interesting ruling at this detention hearing that we were following last week, because the judge said that Hudson can continue to live with family for now, but he's also having the U.S. Marshals look for a potential spot that would work for Hudson and be close to where his family lives on the Gulf Coast. Now, again, Timothy Hudson's just 16 years old. And the judge said if he were older, it wouldn't really be a question of whether Timothy Hudson should be locked up pre-trial. Join us now once again to talk about this case from Florida, former state attorney for Palm Beach County, Dave Ehrenberg. Thanks for being here. You read through, it's 145 pages, but there's about like 20 of them that really lays out a specific narrative that the FBI put together in investigating this case. What stood out to you, if you're a prosecutor on this case? I mean, what does this mean for Timothy Hudson?
What stood out to me, Chris, is the consciousness of guilt. And here you have the defendant who is caught on camera looking both ways as he leaves the room. And then he takes great pains to block his brother from entering the room. Said, wait outside, because he was supposedly changing. And the brother thought it was unusual because all the lights were on, the curtain doors were open, and it was clear who was the last person seen with the victim. But as far as consciousness of guilt, then you have him walking around the ship on camera with the cell phone that was Anna Kepner's, and looking and then for a place to hide it. And then for a while he's there at the location where the phone was hidden, putting the phone in location. Who does that unless you are the one who murdered Anna Kepner?
In the part two, like the next morning, I think it's around 9:30 or so. So this is after the crew members, according to the FBI, they find her body. And then you just think of the commotion that would be going on. And they say that Timothy Hudson walks by the room and he doesn't really look in. I mean, this is his room that they're staying in, and he kind of goes by and he like doesn't, he just looks straight forward as he passes it. At the same time, body language can be very subjective. It can mean a lot of different things depending on the lens that you're looking at through. Like, how does the court typically see those types of pieces of information? Like, how likely is it that any of that gets into trial where, a juror could look at it and say, okay, well, like maybe he's, for whatever reason, looking another direction, or maybe he's looking out of the room because something else was going on. When it comes to being so subjective, like how likely is it that those items get into what the prosecutors want to say?
Well, the question is it relevant evidence? And then it would be admitted. And then it's up to the jurors to put together the puzzle. So pieces of the puzzle, well, who was the last person seen with Anna Kepner? And then obviously you have all the forensic evidence. You have all the evidence of her murder, the sexual assault. But then when it comes to conscience of guilt, yeah, you see him on video lurking around looking for a receptacle to throw away her phone. And then he's there at the place where her phone was found. He's the one who put it there. You see him on camera looking both ways to make sure no one sees him leave the place. He was in that room for hours alone with Anna. You never see Anna ever again. I mean, there's so much evidence here. It's, I think, going to be hard for the defense to actually make a claim that it could be someone else, except for the fact that there was DNA evidence of someone else who apparently had sex with Anna on the cruise. But at the same time, that as well could be helpful for the prosecution because that establishes motive. Why would someone just snap like this? You have someone who had a long, deep-seated attraction to his stepsister, and then he got enraged when he found out that she was with another guy on the cruise, and that's what motivated him to sexually assault her and then put her in a chokehold until her eardrums popped out.
It's chilling, and it kind of, and I'll ask you a little bit just about some of the pretrial arrangements for Timothy Hudson, because I mean it is just, I mean he's 16 years old, I get that, but like what he's accused of is just nasty. It really is, to say the least. There's no camera in the stateroom itself, and we see a lot of movement going in and out, and we know what's been alleged based on the medical examiner's report. But how big of an issue is that for prosecutors? Because at the same time, if you're a really good defense attorney, like you could create this alternate reality, this alternate storyline about what happened, and there's really no proof of what happened inside the room. Obviously, Anna Kepner losing her life, but terms of leading up to what happened, whether there was an argument, whether anything was consensual, there's no video that proves that that didn't happen.
Well, you can bet that because there is the defendant's DNA found in Anna, that the argument will be as consensual for the sexual assault. And then I don't know what they're going to say for the murder, but they're going to say when this comes to sexual assault that it was consensual. But the evidence belies that. Her underwear was found inside her in a bunched up manner, and that is consistent with an aggressive, involuntary sexual assault. Also, you have her dying from a chokehold. I mean, where it was so intense, so brutal that her eardrums popped out, and there were severe marks and signs of neck bruising and bruising around the ear. This was not just consensual sex. I mean, I don't think anyone could say that. Plus, you'll have the testimony of the former boyfriend of Anna, who said that this defendant had acted in a creepy way around Anna in the past, that he was obsessed with her, she knew it. And yet the family seems to just look the other way when this is all going on.
Yeah, and you hear the arrangements of the rooms that were set up, and just the parents were across the hall, but then you have this weird dynamic between Anna and her stepbrother. And even though the parents and the grandparents, it seemed like, oh, they have this great relationship, but at least the grandparents said that, like, it just seems like it wasn't that big of a secret to people who knew them that there was something going on there. Very key witness, it appears, for the first time kind of being identified as the 13-year-old half-brother who was also staying in this room with Anna Kepner and with Timothy Hudson. how does the fact that he was going in and out that night, he apparently is told to stay out of the room for a period of time. The FBI alleges that he actually slept in that room with Anna's body beneath the bed, which is just terrifying as well. How does he factor into how the story is going to be told in court?
He'll be a witness because he was the one who was told not to enter the room, very weirdly, by the defendant. He was staying there too. And when the brother tried to get into the room, the defendant made up some story about how he was changing and then blocked the door. And then the 13-year-old thought it was unusual because all the lights were on, doors were open, and he just recalled how unusual that is. Now, the defense may try to point at him as the guy who did it, but he was not the last one seen with Anna. He was not the one trying to conceal his actions. It was not his DNA found in Anna. So that would just be a lost cause. I think they'd lose credibility with the jury. I think the better attempt would be to try to shove it on the random person on the ship who Anna had sexual relations with. But at the same time, that too, I think, could be a fool's errand because there's no evidence that he committed any act of violence other than having consensual sex with Anna. So, I mean, they're going to try and throw anything against the wall to see if it'll stick. But the evidence is so compelling against the defendant.
Yeah, like, what do you do as a defense attorney at this point? Because I know, like, you could create a defense that, hey, it was consensual. There's all these different defenses that could go out, but it just seems like when you compare it, at least at this point, I think, you compare it to what the FBI is alleging, it just doesn't seem like it would just be kind of this Hail Mary attempt. It feels like, what does a defense attorney do at this point with this young client who is going to be facing a really, really tough case that seems pretty buttoned up, at least from what's being alleged in the documents?
Right. Well, that's why I'm a longtime prosecutor, only recently a defense lawyer, because these things are going to be tough to explain. But they can try just to put the prosecution to its burden of proof and say that although there may be evidence of sexual contact, the DNA evidence does not prove when the sexual activity occurred, whether it was consensual. It doesn't prove whether it was related to the cause of death or who caused the death. They can try to say it's the other guy on the ship who did it or the 13-year-old brother. They all had the same cabin, right? And he had access to 13-year-old. They can say the crew staff also had access to the cabin. And they could see if the government's timeline truly excludes everyone else. That's the kind of thing. You've got to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt. All it takes is one juror to hold out, and that's a hung jury.
It is, yeah. I mean, but it just seems really difficult too, where the CCTV footage shows there's Anna Kepner going into the room, Timothy Hudson's going in. You have this 13-year-old, but it appears, at least the FBI, certainly buying his story, is also 13. I mean, that's, very, very young. When it comes to the pretrial stuff, which last week we saw Timothy Hudson, he goes into court and he's able to go home. What do you make, just based on, I get that he's 16, but with how brutal this murder was, what do you make of the fact that the judge has allowed him to continue living with his uncle?
I think there's a bit of inertia here because the fact that he had been on pretrial release throughout this entire process and had not committed any violations, I think made it easier for the judge to say, okay, we're going to continue on this road. Also, he's not really a flight risk. I mean, he's a juvenile, he doesn't have his own private jet. It's not like Diddy where he can just call someone and get a jet to pick him up. He has no real priors, and so he's not really a threat to the community. And so I can understand that even though this is a very serious crime, that they're not going to put him in prison or in jail before trial. The other thing that's important is his age. And so I think all those things combined. Now, he still could because of the fact that he allegedly committed a heinous murder and a sexual assault. Normally, if it's an adult who's charged with these things, they would face pretrial detention. But because he's a juvenile, because he's been out up to this point and has not violated any of the terms, and because he doesn't have really the means to flee, I think there's a good chance he stays in his current status, or perhaps they step it up a little bit of house arrest. but I can see that happening, being treated differently than if he were an adult.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting. The judge just straight up said if he was older, it wouldn't really be a question of whether or not he would be held in pretrial detention. But I don't think you can just exclude the fact that he's 16
Right.
years old. Another part of this story that was talked about was like any sort of precedent or case law related to this. Of course, this isn't the first time that something bad has happened on a cruise ship before. But is there anything? I mean, how unique is this case? Kind of like stepping back, we've talked about it a bunch. I mean, is there any case to you that kind of lines up with what we're dealing with in this one?
Interesting. Yeah, no, there's always a Florida connection to everything, it
Sure.
seems like.
Yeah, yeah.
And, right? There's a Florida connection. What makes this so unusual is that you don't see acts of violence like this on a cruise ship. You see people fall over. You've seen that. But also, you don't see federal prosecutors involved with juvenile cases very much. Most of these types of cases are prosecuted by state prosecutors, my old job. But because this was in international waters, it goes to the jurisdiction of the feds. And so the feds are dealing with a juvenile, and that is also rare. And that's why it just has captured so much attention, because of the facts, because it's so unusual in so many different ways. But hopefully justice is done here. I think part of the reason why we have the fascination about this also is that you have clueless family members who just enabled this to happen, who were shown red flags, and yet put them all together in the same room while they're out, partying and ignoring reality. And I think that bothers a lot of people, as it should.
Yeah, and on that note, because a lot of times in these cases, like you see a civil side of it, a wrongful death case. But in this case, because, Anna Kepner's dad was on the cruise and her stepmom was on the cruise, like when you have a victim and you look at some family members and you could argue that they put Anna in a room with someone who allegedly killed her, like, I mean, who potentially on like a civil side, like could bring a wrongful death lawsuit? Does that even exist in a world like this where unfortunately you have the victim here, her family members would be the ones being sued?
Yeah. Well, Anna's, I guess she has her biological parents and then she has step parents. So
Yeah.
you have, right. So you have the biological father, I believe, which
Yeah.
is right. The biological father could sue civilly because this is his daughter, and he entrusted his daughter in the care of the mother and the stepfather, and she ends up dead. So yes, he could file a suit. He could also perhaps even try to file a suit against Carnival Cruise Lines. It's difficult to do so, but that's the kind of bad publicity that the cruise line may not want. Also, perhaps more could have been done security-wise. Now, it seems like the security cameras on the ship helped crack this case, and security acted when they could, but perhaps there's something more that the cruise line could have done, and that is a subject for a civil lawsuit.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, obviously a long way to go till we get to that point of the story. We'll see what happens next. Timothy Hudson is out of custody for now. We'll see if he is detained eventually ahead of a trial, but just an incredibly, incredibly sad case, and some new details, though, coming to light. Dave Ehrenberg, former state attorney for Palm Beach County. Thank you, as always, for breaking down these Florida cases for us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law&Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify, and we're also now streaming on Peacock. I'm Chris Stewart. See you next time.